Welcome to the KZGN News. Today we'll bring you news from Sacramento and Governor Brown, city news, KZGN Talking Points editorial, and much more.
From the Rademacher Hills to Bee Mountain and the mighty Sierras, Ridgecrest to Inyokern and China Lake, this is your news for the Indian Wells Valley with the KZGN News crew.
Hello, I'm Tom Whitnick. Thanks for joining us for the news affecting Ridgecrest and the Indian Wells Valley. In news from Sacramento, Jerry Brown on Saturday signed a measure that would eventually allow Californians to be automatically registered to vote when they go to the DMV to obtain or renew a driver's license. The measure, which would also allow Californians to opt out of registering, was introduced in response to the dismal 42% turnout in the November 2014 statewide elections. But many groups are charging this is a major step toward massive voter fraud. There has been no comment from the state elections office that they have the means to check the validity of these new millions of registrations. The legislation depends on the state implementing a new database system in time to adequately check these new registrants. The law takes effect January 1st, but the new registration process will not be offered until the state completes work on a new voter registration database called VoteCal, which is expected around June of 2016, the time of the presidential primary election. The new system would register applicants when they visit a DMV office to get a new license or renew an expiring one, unless they opt out, and without having to fill out a new paper form. It's removing the first barrier to voting, which is registration, said Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez. It's going to lead to millions more Californians being registered to vote, which means more people we can talk to. True the Vote founder Catherine Engelbrecht stated, "This bill is terrible. It makes an already bad situation much, much worse," adding that California's registration database lacked the necessary safeguards to keep non-citizens off the voter rolls. Election Integrity Project of California President Linda Payne echoed that AB 1461 will effectively change the form of governance in California from a republic whose elected officials are determined by United States citizens and will guarantee that non-citizens will participate in all California elections going forward. The Election Integrity Project of California had joined True the Vote to demand that Brown veto the bill, calling it a path to state-sanctioned voter fraud. Although non-citizens' driver's licenses in California feature the phrases "federal limits apply" and "not valid for official federal purposes," True the Vote spokesman Logan Churchwell pointed out that state officials specifically chose not to make non-citizen license holders searchable in their DMV database. In another bill that has been vetoed by the governor, he has vetoed legislation that would have granted terminally ill patients speedier access to potentially life-saving yet experimental drugs. The so-called Right to Try legislation would have allowed patients to petition drug companies for access to experimental treatments that have not yet been approved for use by the Food and Drug Administration, but have already cleared the first phase of testing. In a veto letter, Brown said that terminally ill patients should be able to try and access experimental medication, and that the FDA already has such a program in place. He said the state should give the federal process a chance. Assemblyman Ian Calderon sponsored AB 159. He says that the most critically ill do not qualify for clinical trials, and the process to apply for special FDA permission takes so long that many die before their case is reviewed. 24 other states have right to try laws. Last week, the governor signed legislation granting terminally ill patients the right to end their lives with the help of a physician. In news from the city, yesterday we reported that the City Council last week appointed a new person to the Measure L committee. It was also reported that Robert Gould has also resigned from the committee. So now the city will have to appoint another member. The City of Ridgecrest is now accepting applications for volunteers to serve on the Measure L Citizens Oversight Committee. The City Council will select one volunteer for a 4-year term to oversee the revenues and expenditures of the Measure L funds and provide updates to the people and the City Council. If you are a resident of the City of Ridgecrest and are a retiree, business owner, financial specialist, or just a concerned community member, you may pick up a citizen service application at the City Clerk's office or at the City website. Applications must be submitted for consideration by 5 p.m. on Tuesday, October 20th. For more information, you can contact Rachel Ford, City Clerk, at 760-499-5002. In more news from Sacramento, legislation to eliminate tax liability on student loan debt for former students of Corinthian colleges was signed into law by Governor Brown this week. AB 150 was jointly authored by Senator Bob Huff and co-authored by state Republican leader Gene Fuller. As a lifelong educator, I am a strong believer in enabling students to achieve their goals, said Senator Fuller. What happened with Corinthian colleges was unfortunate. It affected the livelihoods of hundreds of students, including many military service members. They will now be able to continue earning their college degrees and improving their lives without carrying the burdensome debt from this negative experience. I'm pleased that the governor chose to protect these students from being forced to pay taxes on student loan debt for an education they never received, said Senator Huff. Students had no warning or control that Corinthian colleges would suddenly declare bankruptcy and close all campuses. Now the defunct Corinthian colleges was one of the largest for-profit education companies in the nation, enrolling students at its 3 campuses. When Corinthian went into bankruptcy and closed all its campuses, many students were left with significant student loan debt, but no degree to show for their efforts. Former students have the option of seeking a full or partial discharge of their debt, but would then be subject to state tax liability for these obligations. SB 150 removes state income tax liability on forgiven federal, state, or private loan debt for students who elect to forego the credits they have earned. The student relief bill will aid more than 13,000 students whose educational futures were put at risk by the unexpected closure of this college system, said Fuller. Now stay tuned for today's KZGN Talking Points editorial after the break. Thanks for staying with us. Now it's time for the 85th KZGN News Talking Points editorial. Here's today's topic. Will this new California voter registration law at DMV create voter fraud? But first, a couple comments from the last editorial titled, What New Gun Laws Could Be Written to Stop the Types of School Shootings We Have Seen Lately? Harry wrote, To answer your question, I think we need to get rid of gun-free zones and that just enforce current laws on the books. Adding, more laws will not solve anything. I completely agree with you, Harry. Wally wrote this, I could rant on this topic, but instead I'll just say the obvious. Congress has banned any real study of gun violence. We lose 30,000 plus Americans every year, and Congress won't even allow us to study the problem. So yeah, that probably means we don't know exactly the best gun or mental health laws to enact or their effectiveness, because that would require science and data, which Congress opposes. And Wally also included a link to a story that Congress won't let the CDC study the problem. Well, first, Wally, let's make sure we all know that CDC stands for Center for Disease Control. Last time I checked, guns were items, things, not diseases. But if you want to go into a mental illness side of the issue as a separate topic, that would be appropriate. Anti-gunners for years have tried to link guns as an extension of mental illness, the goal being to limit guns for everyone. Some scholars even cited in the past that the mere holding of a gun can make someone go crazy and commit a terrible crime. This is the lunacy that some anti-gunners believe. Guns have nothing to do with mental illness. If someone is intent to kill someone, whether mentally ill or not, they will find a way. The issue is mental illness, not guns. And finding a way to quantify mental illness and incorporate that status into a background check system is appropriate, which is at this time terribly flawed. If the CDC wants to study mental illness as a determining criteria to qualify to purchase a firearm, that is fine. But if the CDC wants to link guns to the violence conducted by one that is mentally ill, then that has no use. Now to today's topic. Will this new California voter registration law at DMV create voter fraud? Well, this is unbelievable. First, we pass a law that allows anyone to get a California driver's license, whether they are here legally or not. Then the liberals come along in their obvious lunacy and now make it so everyone will automatically be registered to vote in California when they pull a driver's license, unless they opt out of it. And then we have to believe that the California Elections Department will create a whole new software system that will link to the DMV's database to make sure those that register are citizens of the United States and California. Do you hear that? We will be depending on software systems to link together in such a way that no fraudulent voters get registered. And by the way, the law goes into effect January 1st, 2.5 months from now. and the Elections Department says they'll have the new software system operating by June of 2016, just in time for next year's presidential elections. That's just 7.5 months from now. Does anyone remember all the millions of dollars spent on software programs implementing Obamacare? The first major problem will be linking two completely separate database systems. How much do you want to bet that after analysis, the software designers will determine that the now two independent systems cannot be tied together? So now they'll have to create a whole new system and have it up and running and tested by next June. The system will have to include all the currently registered voters, along with all the new ones. And how about this? How does the system tie back down to all the local county and city clerks that are their own election officials? So now, every county and city election official will have to have access to these databases. And don't forget, we want to make sure that there are no longer residents of California or people that have died and they get purged from the database. Do states notify each other when they have someone from one state move to a new state? Does the losing state make sure and remove the voter that has registered in another jurisdiction? Does the losing state even know a person that was once registered in that state has registered in another state? I ask those questions because I don't know the answers to them. But if states do not coordinate their voter registration databases, that's another opportunity for voter fraud. But let's get back to this new database we'll need to have here in operation by June of 2016. I don't know about you, but I have little faith that a database will be set up by then that will be sure and not let non-citizens get voting privileges. And that's what this is all about. It's a liberal attempt to include non-citizens, even illegal aliens, the right to vote. So there will be no need for them to assimilate and become citizens. They will already have all the rights as if they are legal citizens. Just exactly how will a database be able to electronically determine a person's citizenship? What database will it have to search to ascertain the registrant is a legal citizen? So this new database that already has to tie the DMV and elections databases together now will also have to tie into another database to determine citizenship. And this will be a federal database. So now we will have three databases that will all have to work together if it is to be done automatically. If that doesn't work, it will fall upon hundreds of new state employees that will have to be hired to examine every new voter registrant that comes through the DMV registration system. And proponents are gleefully celebrating that this new system will bring in millions of new voters. And let's just get it out there. Millions of new Hispanic voters that almost exclusively vote Democrat. Now, before some start in on me that not all Hispanics vote Democrat, I know that. But I want to make sure we're talking about the same thing here. I'm not talking about all the people that are currently legally registered just as I am. I'm referring to the new registrants to come. The millions of illegals that were previously not able to get driver's licenses and are now getting them. Does anyone think that these people won't try to register as Democrats? Of course they will. Maybe there should have been a penalty of false registration written into the law. The law should have dictated that if you try and register and are determined to not be legally able to register, then you should be deported. Maybe that would have helped. But there are no penalties for an illegal registration, just the burden of a system to make sure and catch the invalid registration. In conclusion, this law is totally wrong. If the new registration system doesn't work, we will end up with thousands and thousands of illegal voters. And if anyone out there believes the state can have a whole new system tested and working anytime soon, I have a boat to sell you docked in China Lake. I'm Tom Whitnick, and that's what I think. I'd like to know what you think. If you have any comments about this editorial or would like to discuss or recommend a topic, I'd like to hear from you. Please email them to info@kzgn.net. Now stay tuned for weather and sports when we come back. Thanks for staying with us. Let's go to Keith for the weather. Hey, Keith, you say we got wet weather coming in, huh?
Yes, Tom, we have some wet weather coming. But first, a front spanning from the eastern Great Lakes to the Gulf Coast will bring rain and potential thunderstorms as it moves east. Temperatures continue to be 15 to 20 degrees above normal over parts of the Central Plains. Temperatures across the nation. Carolinas came in at 74, Georgia 77, Arkansas 82, Northern Texas 81, New Mexico 74, and Los Angeles at 85. For our wonderful and wet forecast coming tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 67, northeast wind 5 miles per hour. Wednesday, 20% chance of showers and thunderstorms, high of 92, west-southwest wind 5 miles per hour. Wednesday night, 40% chance of showers and thunderstorms, mostly cloudy, temperature at 68, north wind 5 miles per hour. On Thursday, 50% chance of showers and thunderstorms, mostly cloudy, high near 85, north-northwest wind 5 to 10 miles per hour. Thursday night, 50% chance of showers and thunderstorm continues, mostly cloudy, temperature around 66, east-northeast wind 5 miles per hour. On Friday, 20% chance of showers, mostly cloudy with a high near 84, northwest wind 5 miles per hour. Friday night, mostly cloudy with a low around 64, chance of showers, north-northwest wind 5 miles per hour. On Saturday, 20% chance of showers, mostly sunny with a high near 81, northwest wind 5 miles per hour. Saturday night, 30% chance of showers, mostly cloudy with a low around 63, southwest wind 5 to 10 miles per hour. And on Sunday, 30% chance of showers, partly sunny with a high near 77, west wind 5 miles per hour. And that is a look at your coming wet forecast. Now back to Tom and the rest of the KZGN News.
Thanks, Keith. Now let's go to Tom Heck for sports.
And a very pleasant Tuesday evening to everyone. Let's start with an interesting note. Pat Hayden, the athletic director at USC, the University of Southern California, on Monday fired Steve Sarkisian. Now, they last week said he was just going to be temporarily suspended. A leave of absence, they called it. But Hayden decided to make a full termination. Now, I think the timing wasn't real good. It was after the loss to Washington, but evidently there has been a pattern of alcohol abuse by Sarkisian, which is obviously grounds for termination. So USC will be without Sarkisian, only in his second year. Was the head coach at the University of Washington before he came to USC. Was a former offensive coordinator at USC, worked with Pete Carroll back in the day. Clay Helton will be the interim head coach. He's on the staff right now as one of their coordinators. USC had a very tough game Thursday night. They lost to Washington 17-12. Things aren't going to get a lot easier. They've got to play against some pretty good opponents coming up, including the Cal Bears and the Colorado Buffaloes. Okay, let's talk about baseball right now. Hard to believe, but both series of the American League are going to Game 5. Those will be on Wednesday. On Monday, Texas lost to Toronto in Texas. Toronto beat them twice in Arlington after Texas beat Toronto twice up in their home field up north. And also the Houston Astros, who I thought had the game won in the 8th inning, had a 6-2 lead, suddenly find themselves in Game 5 Wednesday night in Kansas City after blowing the lead, the final score, 9-6 in that game that was played in Houston. So, very interesting. They go back now to one game decides all in Kansas City on Wednesday evening. Okay, talk about Saracoso volleyball. The team dropped a close match on Friday over at Chaffee. They'll play again on Wednesday at Rio Hondo. And in football this past weekend, we mentioned the other day, but worth mentioning again, Burroughs shut out Sultana 42-0. They're now 1-0 in the league, and they will play a team they should probably beat this Friday night at Hesperia. If you can't make the trip, you can tune in to 12:40 a.m. KLOA broadcast starting at 7 o'clock. Now, Austin Griffin, the sophomore quarterback, now 92 of 163 for over 1,300 yards. He has 8 touchdown passes, having a very good season. Running back Mike McKinney now has over 100 yards and 40 carries, 20 catches, 263 yards. Talk about a dual threat. And then we have Mekhi Ayers, 27 catches now, 401 yards. He leads the league in that department. And Tariq Raheem, also with 256 yards, 16 carries, or 16 catches. He is one of the top in the league also. From the NFL, A few notes, interesting, the New York Giants won their second game in a row. They beat the 49ers, our Northern California team, 30-27. That was on Sunday night. New England, big over Dallas. A little surprising, kind of a lopsided score there. Arizona, lopsided score also as they beat Detroit. Chicago, talk about a comeback. They scored 12 points in the fourth quarter to beat Kansas City. And then Cincinnati, comeback of the day, score 17 unanswered points in the fourth quarter to beat Seattle. Atlanta in overtime beat Washington. Tampa Bay, the Eagles, Browns, and the Packers also won. That's your sports for this Tuesday night. For the sports department, I'm Tom Heck at KZGN.
So that's the news for today. Off the KZGN-TV, know you have a choice in what you watch for your news. We all thank you for choosing KZGN-TV, Ridgecrest's only locally owned community TV station. Now stay tuned for Ridgecrest Talk coming up next.